The first thing I saw was the dust cloud, a gray ghost rising from the dirt road, swallowing my truck as I drove deeper into nowhere. I'm Tom, 32, a man running from a past that doesn't let go easy. Omaha was a mess, bad choices, worse fights, and a name I needed to bury. The Miller farm, tucked in the heart of Nebraska's endless flatlands, promised a clean slate. No questions, just work. A bed, 3 meals, and silence. I thought that's what I needed. I was wrong. The road stretched like a scar across the earth, cornfields on both sides, their stalks swaying in a breeze that carried no sound. My truck rattled over ruts, the radio long since dead, picking up nothing but static. The GPS had given up 10 miles back, but the directions old man Miller sent were simple: keep going until you see the red barn. It was late afternoon, the sun low and heavy, painting the fields gold. I'd been driving for hours, the kind of drive that makes your bones ache and your mind wander to places it shouldn't. I kept the windows down, letting the dry air whip through, carrying the faint smell of earth and something sharper, like rust. The barn appeared first, a sagging giant of peeling red paint, its silhouette jagged against the horizon. Beyond it, the farmhouse squatted, low and weathered, its clapboard siding grayed by years of wind and neglect. A windmill creaked lazily nearby, its blades turning slow, like it was tired of the world. I pulled into the yard, gravel crunching under my tires, and killed the engine. The silence hit hard, no birds, no hum of life, just the faint groan of that windmill. It felt like the world was holding its breath. I stepped out, my boots sinking into the dirt, and slung my duffel bag over my shoulder. The air was warm but heavy, like it was pressing down on me. I scanned the yard. A rusted tractor, a pile of splintered fence posts, a chicken coop with a sagging roof. No sign of anyone. I'd called Miller 2 days ago to confirm, my voice echoing in a gas station payphone. He'd sounded gruff, his words clipped, like he didn't have time for chatter. Get here by sundown, he'd said. Work starts at dawn. That was it. No small talk, no welcome. Fine by me. The farmhouse door creaked open, and a man stepped out. Old man Miller, I figured. He was tall, lean as a fence post, his face carved with lines deep as the furrows in his fields. His flannel shirt hung loose, his jeans faded to the color of dust. His eyes, gray and sharp, sized me up like I was livestock. You Tom? He asked, his voice rough as gravel. Yeah, I said, dropping my bag to shake his hand. His grip was iron, his palm calloused to leather. He didn't smile, just nodded toward the house. Ruth's got supper. You'll bunk in the shed out back. Work starts at 5. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. I'd learned long ago not to ask too much of men like Miller. They don't trust talkers. He turned and walked back inside, leaving the door open. I grabbed my bag and followed. The porch boards groaning under my weight. Inside, the house smelled of old wood and boiled cabbage. The kitchen was dim, lit by a single bulb dangling from a frayed cord. A woman stood at the stove, her back to me, stirring something in a pot. Ruth, I assumed. She was small, her shoulders hunched, her gray hair pulled tight in a bun. She didn't turn around. Sit, Miller said, pointing to a table with 3 chairs, one wobbling on uneven legs. I sat, setting my bag at my feet. The table was scarred, covered with a faded checkered cloth. Ruth set a plate in front of me, potatoes, green beans, a slab of pork, all steaming. She didn't look at me, just shuffled back to the stove. Thanks, I said, but she didn't respond. Miller sat across from me, his hands folded, watching me eat. I took a bite, the food bland but filling. The silence stretched, broken only by the clink of my fork and the faint creak of the windmill outside. I glanced at Miller, trying to read him. His face gave nothing away, but his eyes kept flicking to the window, like he was waiting for something. "You done this kind of work before?" he asked finally. "Some," I said. "Fences, livestock, crops. Whatever needs doing." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. I'd worked farms as a kid, before things went sideways. I could handle a shovel and a hammer, but I wasn't a farmer. I was a survivor. He grunted, seeming satisfied. "Fields need tending. Fences are shot. Cows need milking, chickens fed. You'll figure it out." I nodded, swallowing a bite of pork. Ruth sat down, her plate half empty, her eyes fixed on it. She hadn't said a word, and I noticed her hands, knotted, trembling slightly, like she was gripping something invisible. I wanted to ask about the farm, about the work, about why the hell they lived so far from anything, but the air in that kitchen told me to keep my mouth shut. After supper, Miller led me to the shed out back. It was a lean-to tacked onto the barn, barely bigger than a closet, with a cot, a sink, and a single bulb. A cracked mirror hung on one wall, a bucket in the corner for a toilet. "It ain't much," Miller said, "but it's dry." He handed me a key and left without another word. I locked the door behind him, the click loud in the quiet. I dropped my bag and sat on the cot, the springs squeaking. The shed smelled of mildew and old straw, but it was better than the streets. I unpacked my clothes, my knife, a few books I carried to keep my mind from rotting. Outside, the windmill kept creaking, a steady rhythm that should have been soothing but wasn't. I looked out the small window, the glass warped and dirty. The cornfield stretched into the dark, their edges swallowed by shadow. For a moment, I thought I saw something move out there, a flicker, like a light bobbing between the stalks. I blinked, and it was gone. I lay down, the cot hard against my back, and tried to sleep. The windmill's creak filled the night, but there was something else, faint. Under it. A hum, low and steady, like a machine buried deep in the earth. I told myself it was nothing, just the sound of an old farm settling. But as I closed my eyes, the hum seemed to grow, vibrating in my chest, whispering my name. The next morning, I woke before dawn, the air cold and damp. My breath fogged as I pulled on my boots and jacket. The hum was gone, replaced by the distant cluck of chickens and the lowing of cows. I stepped outside, the yard gray in the pre-dawn light. The farmhouse was dark, no sign of Miller or Ruth. I headed to the barn, my boots crunching on frost-covered gravel. The air smelled of earth and manure, familiar but sharper here, like the land itself was alive and breathing. Miller had left a list tacked to the barn door: feed chickens, check fences, milk cows, clear weeds from the north field. Simple enough. I started with the chickens, grabbing a sack of feed from the barn. The coop was a rickety thing, wire mesh patched with duct tape. The hens were restless, pecking at the ground, their eyes darting like they were waiting for something to pounce. I scattered the feed, watching them scramble, and noticed one hen missing. No feathers, no blood, just gone. I checked the coop's corners, the fence, nothing. Odd, but not unheard of. Foxes, maybe. I made a mental note to ask Miller. The fences were worse than I expected. The posts were splintered, some leaning like drunks, the wire rusted and sagging. I spent hours hammering new posts, stringing wire, my hands blistered by noon. The sun climbed, burning off the frost, but the air stayed heavy, like it was pressing down harder. I kept glancing at the cornfields, their stalks towering, swaying in a breeze I couldn't feel. That flicker from last night stuck in my head, but I didn't see it now. Just corn, endless corn. Lunch was leftovers from supper, eaten alone in the kitchen. Ruth was there, washing dishes, her back to me again. I tried talking, just a nice day, to break the ice, but she only nodded, her hands moving faster in the soapy water. Miller was out somewhere, probably the fields. I finished quick and got back to work, the silence of the house following me like a shadow. The cows were next, a dozen Holsteins in a pasture near the barn. They were calm enough, but their eyes followed me, unblinking, as I set up the milking stools. The barn's interior was dim, smelling of hay and dung, the air thick with dust motes. I worked fast, the rhythm of milking soothing in its way, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Not by the cows, something else, something in the corners where the light didn't reach. I finished, locked the barn, and moved to the north field. The weeds were thick, choking the corn's roots. I hacked at them with a hoe, sweat stinging my eyes, the sun relentless now. The field stretched forever, the stalks closing in, their leaves rustling like whispers. I stopped once, sure I'd heard my name, low and drawn out, but it was just the wind. Had to be. I worked until dusk, the sky turning bruise purple, the air cooling fast. The windmill's creak was louder now, a steady heartbeat in the quiet. Supper was the same as last night, silent except for the clink of forks. Miller asked how the day went, and I mentioned the missing hen. He shrugged, said it happens, didn't look up from his plate. Ruth's hands shook worse than before, spilling a bit of water as she poured. I wanted to ask about the hum I'd heard, the flicker in the fields, but their faces told me to keep quiet. I ate, thanked them, and went back to the shed. That night, the hum was back, louder, vibrating through the walls. I sat up, my knife in hand, staring at the window. The fields were dark, but there it was again, a flicker, slow and deliberate, moving between the stalks. I watched it for an hour, my heart pounding, until it faded. I didn't sleep. Days blurred into weeks. The work was endless, the farm a machine that didn't stop. I fixed fences, milked cows, fed chickens, cleared weeds. The missing hens became a pattern, one every few days, no trace. The cows started acting strange, crowding together in the pasture, lowing at nothing. Miller kept saying it was normal, but his eyes said different. Ruth stopped coming out of the house much, her face pale, her hands always trembling. The hum never left. It was there every night, sometimes soft, sometimes loud enough to rattle my teeth. The flickers in the fields grew brighter, moving closer to the yard. I stopped asking Miller about them after he snapped at me one morning, his face red, his voice shaking. "Mind your work, boy," he'd said, and I did. But I kept my knife close, slept with it under my pillow. One night, 3 weeks in, I saw something new. I was locking the barn when I heard a sound, not the hum, but a low, wet gurgle, like something choking. It came from the edge of the cornfield, where the stalks met the yard. I held up my lantern, the light shaking in my hand, and saw nothing but shadows. But the shadows moved, twisting in ways shadows shouldn't. I backed away, locked the shed, and sat up all night, the knife in my lap. The next morning, I found tracks in the dirt near the field. Not animal, not human, long, thin, like claws dragged through the earth. They led into the corn and stopped, like whatever made them vanished. I showed Miller, but he just kicked dirt over them, muttering about kids playing tricks. There were no kids for miles. I didn't say it, but I knew he was lying. The farm was changing me. I felt it in my bones, in the way my hands shook when I held the hoe, in the way I jumped at every creak of the windmill. The isolation was one thing, Omaha had been loud, chaotic, but this was different. This wasn't just quiet. It was empty, like the land itself was waiting, watching. I started checking the locks twice, keeping the lantern lit all night. The hum grew louder, the flickers closer, and every night, I swore I heard my name, clearer each time. By the end of the first month, I was sure of one thing: the Miller farm wasn't just a farm. Something was wrong here, something old and hungry, buried in the dirt or hiding in the stalks. I should have left then, packed my bag and driven away. But I didn't. Part of me was too stubborn, part of me too broke. And part of me, the stupid part, wanted to know what was out there, calling my name in the dark. The flicker came again that night, brighter, like a lantern swinging in the corn, but no one was out there. I stood at the shed's window, my breath fogging the warped glass, my knife gripped tight. The light pulsed, slow and deliberate, weaving between the stalks, closer than before. It wasn't fireflies, too big, too steady. It wasn't a lantern either. No one in their right mind would be out in those fields at midnight. My heart thudded, the hum from the earth vibrating in my chest, matching the rhythm of that cursed windmill's creak. I'd been on the Miller farm for a month, and the quiet I'd come for was gone. Something was awake out there, and it knew I was watching. Morning broke gray and heavy, the sky bruised with clouds that promised rain but never delivered. I dragged myself out of the shed, my eyes gritty from no sleep. The air was thick, smelling of damp earth and something sour, like milk gone bad. I checked the locks twice before heading to the barn, the routine of work the only thing keeping me grounded. Feed the chickens, milk the cows, mend the fences. Miller's list never changed, but the farm did. Every day, it felt a little less like a place and a little more like a trap. The chickens were worse today. I tossed feed into the coop, and they scattered, squawking, their feathers ruffled like they'd seen a ghost. Another hen was gone, number 5 this week. No feathers, no blood, just an empty space where it should have been. I checked the wire mesh, the dirt around the coop, even climbed into the rafters looking for a hole. Nothing. It was like the hen had been plucked out of the world. I stood there, the sack of feed heavy in my hands, and felt the back of my neck prickle. The cornfield loomed across the yard, its stalks whispering in a breeze I couldn't feel. I didn't look too long. Breakfast was the usual, boiled eggs, toast, coffee black as tar. Miller sat across from me, his face like weathered wood, his eyes fixed on his plate. Ruth moved slow, setting out the food, her hands trembling worse than yesterday. She hadn't spoken to me in days, not since I'd asked about the missing chickens. I tried to catch her eye, but she kept her head down, her lips pressed tight. The kitchen was dim, the single bulb flickering like it was tired of trying. I cleared my throat, the sound loud in the silence. "Another hen's gone," I said, keeping my voice even. "No sign of it. Coop's secure." Miller grunted, not looking up. "Happens. Foxes, maybe. Foxes leave a mess," I said. "Feathers, blood. This is clean." He stopped chewing, his jaw tight. For a moment, I thought he'd snap at me, but he just shrugged. "Check the traps later. Set more if you need to." I nodded, but I knew traps wouldn't help. Whatever was taking the chickens wasn't a fox. I glanced at Ruth, hoping for something, any sign she'd back me up, but she was at the sink now, scrubbing a plate so hard it might break. Her shoulders were hunched, like she was bracing for a blow. I finished my coffee and left, the weight of their silence following me out. The fences were my next job, endless rows of splintered posts and rusted wire. I worked alone, the sun climbing slow, the air growing heavier. My hands were raw from hammering, my shirt soaked with sweat. The cornfield surrounded me, their stalks taller than me, their leaves rustling like they were talking to each other. I kept my knife in my belt, its weight a small comfort. Every so often, I'd stop, sure I'd heard something, a whisper, a footstep, but it was just the wind. Or so I told myself. By noon, I was halfway down the east field when I saw it, a patch of ground where the dirt looked wrong. It was darker, wetter, like something had been spilled. I knelt, my fingers brushing the soil. It was sticky, not like water, but thicker, almost oily. The smell hit me, rotten, sweet, like the air in the barn last night. I dug a little, my knife cutting through the dirt, and found something soft. A feather, black and slick, not like any bird I'd seen. I held it up, the light catching its sheen, and my stomach twisted. It wasn't right. Nothing about it was right. I pocketed the feather and kept working, but my head wasn't in it. The flicker from last night kept playing in my mind, that slow, deliberate pulse. I'd told myself it was nothing, maybe a neighbor's light or some natural phenomenon, but there were no neighbors, not for miles. And that hum, it wasn't just in my head. It was in the ground, in the air, a low thrum that made my teeth ache. I glanced at the corn, its shadows long and sharp, and swore I saw movement. Just a flicker, gone when I blinked. I worked faster, wanting to be done, to be back in the shed with the door locked. Supper was quiet, like always. Ruth set out plates of stew, her hands shaking so bad she spilled some on the table. Miller ate like a machine, his eyes on his food, but I caught him glancing at the window, same as last night. I wanted to ask about the feather, the lights, the hum, but the air in the kitchen was thick with something unspoken. I ate quick, the stew tasteless, and excused myself. Ruth didn't look up. Miller just nodded. Back in the shed, I locked the door and pulled the feather from my pocket. It glinted under the bulb, its edges too sharp, like it could cut. I set it on the sink, not wanting it near me, and sat on the cot. The hum was back, louder tonight, vibrating through the walls. I checked the window, the locks, my knife still in my belt. The fields were dark, but there they were, those lights, pulsing slow, closer now. Maybe 100 yards out. They moved like they had a purpose, weaving through the corn, never coming into the yard but never leaving either. I didn't sleep. I sat there, knife in hand, watching the lights until dawn. They faded with the first gray light, but the hum didn't stop. It was in my head now, a constant drone, like a voice trying to speak. I thought about leaving, packing my bag and driving away, but I had nowhere to go. Omaha was a dead end, and I had no money, no plan. The farm was all I had, even if it was starting to feel like a cage. The next day, I found more tracks near the coop, those same claw-like marks, deeper now, leading into the corn. I followed them a few steps, my knife ready, but they stopped at the field's edge, like whatever made them had vanished. I told Miller, showed him the feather. He looked at it, his face blank, and handed it back. "Burn it," he said, and walked away. I didn't. I kept it, locked it in my bag, not sure why. The lights came every night now, brighter, closer. The hum grew louder, sometimes so strong I could feel it in my bones. The chickens kept disappearing, the cows grew restless, and Ruth stopped leaving the house. Miller worked harder, stayed out later, his eyes red, his temper short. I kept my knife sharp, my door locked, and my eyes on the fields. Something was out there, watching, waiting. And every night, when the hum was loudest, I heard it, my name, clear as a bell, whispered from the corn. The cow was dead before I reached the pasture, its body sprawled in the dew-soaked grass, throat torn open like a butcher's cut, but not a drop of blood in sight. The morning was cold, the kind that seeps into your bones, and the air carried that same sour, rotten smell I'd found in the dirt yesterday. I stood over the carcass, my breath clouding, my knife heavy in my belt. The other cows huddled at the far end of the field, their eyes wide, lowing soft and nervous. They knew something I didn't, and the weight of that knowledge made my skin crawl. I'd been on the Miller farm for 6 weeks now, and the place was unraveling. The lights in the cornfields came every night, pulsing closer, brighter, like they were testing the edges of the yard. The hum was constant, a low drone that followed me from the shed to the barn, from the fields to the house. The chickens were down to half their number, vanishing without a trace, and now this cow, dead in a way that wasn't natural. I'd seen kills before, coyotes, dogs, even a mountain lion once in Colorado. They leave chaos, torn flesh, scattered blood, tracks. This was clean, precise, like the cow had been drained and discarded. I crouched, my fingers brushing the grass. It was dry, brittle, as if the life had been sucked out of it too. I headed to the house, my boots heavy with mud, the feather from yesterday still tucked in my pocket. Miller was at the kitchen table, his coffee untouched, his face gray under the dim bulb. Ruth was at the stove, her back to me, stirring something that smelled like burned oats. The air in the kitchen was thick, the silence heavier than usual. I cleared my throat, my voice rough from lack of sleep. "Found a cow dead in the pasture," I said. "Throat's gone. No blood." Miller's eyes flicked up, sharp, then back to his mug. "Coyotes," he muttered. "Coyotes don't do that," I said, sharper than I meant. "No mess, no tracks. It's wrong." He didn't answer, just sipped his coffee, his knuckles white around the mug. Ruth froze, her spoon scraping the pot once, then stopping. I waited, expecting something, anger, denial, anything, but they just sat there, like I'd said nothing at all. I wanted to push, to demand answers, but the look in Miller's eyes stopped me. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was older, deeper, like he was carrying something he couldn't put down. I left the kitchen, the door slamming behind me, and went back to the pasture. The cows were still bunched together, their breath steaming in the cold. I checked the body again, looking for anything I'd missed. The throat wound was smooth, edges clean, like a scalpel had done it. No claw marks, no teeth, just a hole where life used to be. I walked the fence line, searching for tracks, but the ground was hard, untouched except for those claw-like marks I'd seen before, faint now, leading into the corn. I didn't follow them. Not yet. The day dragged on, the work relentless. I fed the chickens, their numbers dwindling, their squawking louder, more frantic. The pigs were worse, crowding into the corners of their pen, squealing at shadows. I tossed them feed, but they barely touched it, their eyes darting to the fields. I mended more fences, the wire cutting into my palms, the posts wobbling in the loose soil. The corn loomed, its stalks denser now, like a wall closing in. Every rustle made me jump, my hand going to my knife, but it was just the wind. Or so I told myself. By noon, the sky was lead gray, the air thick with the promise of a storm that never came. I ate lunch alone, Ruth and Miller nowhere to be seen. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting to break. I found a note on the table, Miller's handwriting, jagged, "Check the north field. Weeds. No please, no thanks." I crumpled it and went, the hoe over my shoulder, my eyes on the corn. The north field was a mess, weeds choking the corn like they were trying to strangle it. I hacked at them, my arms burning, my mind stuck on the cow, the lights, the hum. The feather was still in my pocket, its weight heavier than it should have been. I stopped once, sure I'd heard my name, whispered low, but the field was empty. Just stalks, endless stalks, their shadows sharp as knives. I worked faster, wanting to be done, to be anywhere but here. Supper was silent, the stew cold, the kitchen darker than usual. Ruth's hands shook so bad she dropped a spoon, the clatter loud enough to make me flinch. Miller didn't look at her, didn't look at me, just ate like he was counting the bites. I tried to bring up the cow again, but he cut me off. "Bury it," he said, his voice flat. "Tomorrow." I nodded, my jaw tight, and left. Ruth didn't move, her eyes on the table, her hands knotted in her lap. Back in the shed, I locked the door, checked the window, and sat on the cot. The hum was louder tonight, vibrating through the floor, making the bulb flicker. I pulled the feather out, its black sheen catching the light. It wasn't a bird's feather, not really. Too smooth, too heavy, like it was made of something else. I set it on the sink, next to the knife, and stared out the window. The lights were there, closer now, pulsing in the corn, maybe 50 yards out. They moved slow, deliberate, like they were circling the yard. I watched them until my eyes burned, my hand on the knife, my heart pounding. The next morning, I buried the cow. The ground was hard, the shovel biting into my blisters, but I dug until it was deep enough. The other cows watched, their lowing soft, mournful. I covered the body, the dirt falling heavy, and noticed something. The grass around the grave was already wilting, turning gray, like the life was being sucked out. I didn't tell Miller. He wouldn't care. The animals got worse after that. The pigs stopped eating, their squeals turning to high, panicked shrieks at night. The chickens were down to a dozen, their coop a mess of scattered feathers, though I never found blood. The cows stayed huddled, refusing to graze near the corn. I found more tracks, those claw-like marks, deeper, more frequent, circling the barn, the coop, the shed. I set traps, like Miller said, but they stayed empty. Whatever was out there wasn't falling for it. The hum was constant now, day and night, a low throb that made my head ache. The lights were bolder, coming right to the edge of the yard, their glow casting shadows that twisted like living things. I stopped sleeping, my nights spent watching the window, the knife in my hand. Miller and Ruth were ghosts, barely speaking, their eyes hollow. I caught Ruth once, staring out the kitchen window at the fields, her face pale, her lips moving like she was praying. I didn't ask what she saw. I didn't want to know. One night, I heard it again, my name, clear as day, whispered from the corn. I froze, the knife shaking in my hand, the lights pulsing just beyond the yard. The hum was so loud it rattled the glass, and for a moment, I thought I saw something in the field, not a light, but a shape, tall and thin, moving through the stalks. I locked the door, checked it twice, and sat there, the knife in my lap, waiting for dawn. The farm wasn't just a farm anymore. It was something else, something alive, and it was watching me. The whisper came sharp and clear, my name slithering through the corn like a snake, pulling me out of a shallow sleep. I bolted upright on the cot, the knife already in my hand, its blade catching the faint glow of the bulb overhead. The shed was cold, the air thick with that sour, metallic smell that clung to the farm now. Outside, the lights pulsed in the fields, closer than ever, their slow rhythm matching the hum vibrating through the walls. It was 2 months into my time at the Miller farm, and the place wasn't just unraveling, it was turning on me. I didn't sleep after that whisper. I sat there, knife ready, staring at the window. The lights moved through the corn, weaving between stalks, never crossing into the yard but always there, like they were waiting. The hum was louder now, a constant drone that burrowed into my skull, making my teeth ache. It wasn't just a sound anymore, it felt alive, like it was trying to speak, to pull me out into the dark. I checked the lock again, the click loud in the silence, and gripped the knife tighter. Dawn was hours away, and I wasn't sure I'd make it. Morning came slow, the sky a dull gray, the air heavy with the threat of rain that never fell. I dragged myself out of the shed, my body aching from tension, my eyes burning. The farm was quiet, too quiet, no birds, no wind, just the creak of the windmill and that endless hum. I headed to the barn, my boots crunching on frost-covered gravel, the feather still in my pocket, its weight a constant reminder of something I couldn't name. The animals were worse than ever. The chickens, down to 10 now, huddled in the coop, their eyes wild, their feathers scattered like they'd been fighting something. The pigs squealed at nothing, pressing against the pen's walls, their snouts bloody from scraping. The cows stayed bunched in the pasture, refusing to move, their lowing a low, mournful hum that matched the one in my head. I fed the chickens, my hands shaking as I scattered the grain. Another hen was gone, no trace, just like the others. I checked the coop, the wire, the dirt, nothing. The traps I'd set were empty, not even tripped. I moved to the pigs, tossing feed they ignored, their eyes fixed on the cornfields. The air felt wrong, heavier, like it was pressing down, watching. I glanced at the fields, the stalks towering, their shadows sharp and still. For a moment, I swore I heard it again, my name, soft, almost a sigh, coming from the corn. I spun around, knife out, but there was nothing. Just stalks, endless stalks. Breakfast was silent, the kitchen dim, the bulb flickering like it was giving up. Miller sat at the table, his face haggard, his coffee cold. Ruth was at the sink, her hands trembling so bad the dishes clinked. I didn't bother mentioning the missing hen or the dead cow from yesterday. I'd tried before, and Miller's answers were always the same: coyotes, foxes, traps. Lies, all of them. I ate fast, the eggs tasteless, and left without a word. Ruth didn't look up. Miller's eyes followed me to the door, but he said nothing. The day's work was fences again, the endless task of hammering posts and stringing wire. My hands were raw, the blisters split open, blood mixing with dirt. The cornfields loomed closer, their stalks denser, like they were growing faster than they should. I worked alone, the hum louder now, vibrating through the ground, up my legs, into my chest. Every rustle in the corn made me jump, my hand on the knife, my eyes scanning the stalks. I found more tracks, those claw-like marks, deeper, fresher, circling the field like a noose. They led into the corn and stopped, like always. I didn't follow. I wasn't ready. By noon, I was in the north field, hacking at weeds that seemed to grow back overnight. The air was thick, the sky a flat gray, the hum so loud it drowned out the windmill's creak. I stopped once, sure I'd heard my name again, clearer this time, drawn out like a taunt. I gripped the hoe, my knuckles white, and scanned the field. Nothing. Just corn, its leaves rustling, whispering. I worked faster, my heart pounding, the feather in my pocket heavy as a stone. I found another patch of dirt, dark and oily, like the one before. I dug, my knife cutting deep, and found another feather, black, slick, identical to the first. I shoved it in my pocket with the other, my hands shaking, and kept working. Supper was the same, stew, cold, the kitchen silent. Ruth dropped a plate, the crash loud enough to make me flinch. Miller didn't react, just ate, his eyes on the window. I wanted to ask about the tracks, the feathers, the whispers, but the air in the room was a warning. I ate, left, and locked myself in the shed. The hum was louder than ever, rattling the bulb, making the walls hum. I pulled out the feathers, their sheen unnatural under the light. They weren't right, weren't natural. I locked them in my bag, next to the knife, and checked the window. The lights were there, closer, maybe 30 yards out, pulsing slow, deliberate. They moved like they were alive, circling, watching. I didn't sleep. The whispers came again, my name over and over, clear now, coming from the corn. The hum was a roar, shaking the shed, my bones, my mind. I sat on the cot, knife in hand, watching the lights until dawn. They faded with the light, but the whispers didn't stop. They were in my head now, soft, insistent, calling me out. I checked the locks, the window, my bag. The feathers were still there, glinting like they were mocking me. The next day, I found more tracks, more feathers, more patches of oily dirt. The animals were worse, pigs screaming, chickens scattering, cows refusing to move. I worked through it, my hands bloody, my head pounding with the hum. Miller avoided me, Ruth stayed inside, and the farm felt like it was closing in. The whispers came during the day now, my name hissed through the corn, the lights flickering even in daylight, faint but there. I kept my knife sharp, my door locked, my eyes on the fields. Something was out there, closer every day, and it wasn't just watching anymore. It was calling. The scream tore through the night, a woman's voice, raw and desperate, slicing the silence like a knife through flesh. I was in the yard, checking the coop under the faint glow of my lantern, when it hit. My boots sank into the mud, the air cold and thick, the hum vibrating in my chest. It came from the barn, that scream, sharp and human, not like any animal I'd ever heard. It stopped as quick as it started, leaving the night heavier, the cornfields silent except for the creak of the windmill and that relentless hum. 2.5 months on the Miller farm, and I knew this place wasn't just wrong, it was alive with something that wanted me to hear it. I stood frozen, my lantern shaking, casting jagged shadows across the yard. The barn loomed ahead, its red paint peeling like old skin, the doors slightly ajar, black as a mouth. My knife was in my belt, its weight a small anchor, but it felt useless now. The scream echoed in my head, a woman's voice, not Ruth's, she was too frail, her voice too soft. I called out, my voice cracking, "Miller? Ruth?" Nothing. Just the windmill's creak and the hum, louder now, like it was feeding off the scream. I should have gone back to the shed, locked the door, and waited for dawn. But that scream wasn't something you walk away from. It was a hook, pulling me toward the barn. I moved slow, my boots heavy, the lantern's light barely cutting through the dark. The air was thick, smelling of rot and metal, the same stench that clung to the dead cow, the oily dirt, the feathers in my pocket. The cornfields watched, their stalks still, no rustle, no whisper of my name tonight. Just silence, heavy and wrong. I reached the barn doors, their hinges rusted, groaning as I pushed them open. The smell hit harder, rotten, sweet, like something dead left to fester. My lantern flickered, shadows dancing across hay bales, rusted tools, empty stalls. The horses were long gone, sold off weeks ago, but the barn felt full, like something was hiding in the corners. I called again, anyone there? My voice echoed, swallowed by the dark. The hum was stronger here, vibrating through the floor, up my legs, into my skull. I moved deeper, my boots scuffing dirt, my heart pounding so hard I could taste it. The lantern's light caught something in the corner, a trapdoor, half hidden under a pile of straw, its edges caked with fresh dirt, like it had been opened recently. I'd been in this barn every day for months, and I'd never seen it. My stomach twisted, the scream replaying in my head. I knelt, my knife out, and brushed the straw away. The trapdoor was heavy, wood-warped, with a rusted ring for a handle. I hesitated, my hand hovering, the hum so loud it made my teeth ache. I should have walked away. I knew it, felt it in my bones. But the scream, the lights, the whispers, they'd been building to this, pulling me here. I gripped the ring and pulled. The trapdoor creaked open, the smell hitting me like a wave, rotten, metallic, choking. Below was a set of wooden stairs, descending into darkness, their edges worn smooth, like they'd been used for years. I held the lantern over the opening, its light swallowed by the black. The hum was deafening now, coming from below, vibrating the air, my skin, my soul. I called out one last time, my voice weak, "Hello?" Nothing. Just the hum, and something else, a faint rustle, like cloth dragging over dirt. I stepped onto the stairs, the wood creaking under my weight, the lantern shaking in my hand. The air grew colder, damp, like a grave. The walls were packed dirt, rough and wet, roots poking through like veins. The hum pulsed, matching my heartbeat, pulling me down. I moved slow, each step heavier, the scream echoing in my mind. The stairs ended in a tunnel, narrow and low, the lantern barely lighting the way. The walls were scratched, not random, but patterned, spirals, jagged lines, symbols that made my eyes hurt. I stopped, my breath shallow, the knife slick in my palm. The tunnel opened into a chamber, and I froze. The lantern's light fell on a stone slab, stained dark with something that wasn't mud. On it was a bundle of cloth, small, too small, torn and stained red. A child's dress, its edges frayed, its fabric heavy with something wet. The hum was everywhere now, shaking the walls, my bones, my mind. I stepped closer, my legs weak, and saw more, bones, small and brittle, scattered around the slab, half buried in the dirt. My stomach churned, bile rising, the scream ringing in my ears. I backed away, my lantern swinging, shadows twisting like they were alive. Then I heard it, a low, wet gurgle, like the one I'd heard in the fields weeks ago. It came from deeper in the tunnel, beyond the chamber. The hum surged, the air vibrating, my teeth aching. I turned to run, my boots slipping on the dirt, when the lantern flickered, and I saw her. A woman, or something like one, standing at the edge of the light. Her face was pale, too pale, her eyes black and too big, like holes punched in a mask. Her mouth stretched wide, a smile that wasn't human, her teeth sharp and uneven. She didn't move, just stared, the hum pulsing around her, through her. I bolted, the lantern swinging, the stairs a blur. I slammed the trapdoor shut, my hands shaking, and ran through the barn, out into the yard. The air was cold, the lights in the fields brighter, pulsing faster, like they were alive. The house was dark, no sign of Miller or Ruth. I didn't stop to check. I grabbed my keys, my bag, and jumped into my truck. The engine roared, the tires spinning in the mud, and I tore down the dirt road, the barn shrinking in my rear view. The lights followed, flickering in the fields, keeping pace. I drove all night, the hum fading but never gone, my hands shaking on the wheel. By dawn, I was 100 miles away, parked at a gas station, my heart still pounding. I called the sheriff, my voice hoarse, and told him everything, the scream, the trapdoor, the dress, the woman. He listened, said he'd check, told me to stay put. A day later, he called back. Nothing. No trapdoor, no symbols, no dress. The barn was just a barn. Miller and Ruth were there, acting normal, saying I'd been drinking, making it up. The sheriff didn't believe me. I could hear it in his voice. I'm in a motel now, far from Nebraska, but the hum's still here, faint, under the floor. The lights are back, flickering outside my window, just beyond the lot. Last night, I saw her again, standing in the shadows, that same smile. My knife's close, but it's useless. The lock on my door was undone this morning, and I didn't touch it. Whatever's out there, it followed me. And it's not done, the barn doors groaned under my hands, the scream still burning in my ears, a woman's cry that wasn't Ruth's, wasn't anything human by the end. I'd heard it just minutes ago, standing in the yard with my lantern, the night so still it felt like the world was holding its breath. 3 months on the Miller farm, and the place had gone from strange to sinister. The lights in the cornfields, the whispers of my name, the dead cow, the vanishing chickens, it all led to this moment, to the barn, its shadow swallowing the yard. My knife was in my belt, my lantern trembling, but I couldn't turn back. That scream demanded answers, even if I wasn't ready for them. The air was cold, heavy with that rotten, metallic smell that clung to everything now, the fields, the coop, my clothes. I pushed the barn doors wider, the hinges screaming, and stepped inside. The lantern's light flickered, casting long shadows over hay bales, rusted pitchforks, and empty stalls. The horses were gone, sold off weeks ago, but the barn felt alive, like it was watching. The hum was here, louder, vibrating through the dirt floor, up my legs, into my chest. My boots scuffed as I moved deeper, the smell growing worse, choking, like something dead left to rot in the dark. I called out, my voice thin, Miller. Ruth? Anyone? The words echoed, unanswered, swallowed by the hum. The air felt wrong, thick, pressing against my skin. I swept the lantern around, its light catching on something in the corner, a pile of straw, disturbed, not like I'd seen it before. I moved closer, my heart pounding, and saw it, a trapdoor, half hidden, its edges caked with fresh dirt, like someone had opened it and tried to cover their tracks. I'd been in this barn every day, feeding, cleaning, mending, and I'd never seen this door. It wasn't right. I knelt, my knife out, the lantern shaking in my other hand. The trapdoor was heavy, wood-warped and splintered, with a rusted iron ring. The hum was deafening now, coming from below, shaking the ground, my bones. I thought of the scream, the lights, the feathers in my pocket, two now, black and slick, unnatural. I should have walked away, gone back to the shed, packed my bag, and left this cursed place. But the scream was a hook, pulling me down. I gripped the ring and pulled, the trapdoor creaking open, releasing a wave of that rotten, metallic stench that made me gag. Below was darkness, a set of wooden stairs, descending into a void. The lantern's light barely reached the first few steps, their edges worn smooth, like they'd been used for years. I called out again, "Hello?" My voice was a whisper, lost in the hum. The air was cold, damp, like a grave. I stood there, knife in one hand, lantern in the other, my breath shallow. The scream had come from here, I was sure of it. I took a step down, the wood creaking under my weight, the hum growing louder, vibrating my teeth. Another step, then another, the darkness swallowing the light, the smell wrapping around me like a shroud. The stairs ended in a tunnel, narrow and low, the walls packed dirt, rough and wet, with roots twisting through like veins. The hum was a roar now, shaking the air, my skin, my mind. I moved slow, the lantern barely lighting the way, its glow catching on scratches in the walls, not random, but deliberate, spirals and jagged lines, symbols that made my eyes ache. The tunnel widened into a chamber, and I stopped, my breath catching. The lantern's light fell on a stone slab in the center, stained dark with something thick, not mud, not blood, but something worse. On it was a bundle of cloth, small, torn, stained red, a child's dress, its edges frayed, its fabric heavy with something wet. I stepped closer, my legs weak, the hum so loud it drowned out my thoughts. The dress wasn't alone. Around the slab, half buried in the dirt, were bones, small, brittle, not animal. My stomach churned, bile rising, the scream echoing in my head. The lantern shook, shadows twisting, and I saw more, scratches on the slab, more symbols, carved deep, like they were meant to hold something in. Or call something out. The hum pulsed, matching my heartbeat, and I heard it again, a low, wet gurgle, like the one from the fields, coming from deeper in the tunnel. I backed away, my boots slipping, the lantern swinging wildly. The air was alive, pressing against me, the hum a voice now, whispering my name, over and over. I turned to run, my knife raised, when the lantern flickered, and she was there. A woman, or something like one, at the edge of the light. Her face was too pale, her eyes too big, black as oil, her mouth stretched in a smile that wasn't human. Her teeth were sharp, uneven, glinting like the feathers in my pocket. She didn't move, just stared, the hum pulsing through her, around her, like she was part of it. I ran, the stairs a blur, my breath ragged. I slammed the trapdoor shut, the sound echoing in the barn, and stumbled into the yard. The air was cold, the lights in the fields brighter, pulsing faster, like they were chasing me. The house was dark, no sign of Miller or Ruth. I didn't stop. I grabbed my keys, my bag, and jumped into my truck, the engine roaring to life. The tires spun in the mud, the farm shrinking in my rear view, the lights following, flickering in the corn, keeping pace. I drove all night, the hum fading but never gone, my hands shaking on the wheel. Dawn found me at a gas station. 100 miles away, my heart still racing. I called the sheriff, my voice hoarse, and told him everything, the scream, the trapdoor, the dress, the woman. He said he'd check, told me to stay put. A day later, he called back. Nothing. No trapdoor, no symbols, no dress. The barn was just a barn. Miller and Ruth were there, saying I'd been drinking, making it up. The sheriff didn't believe me. I could hear it. I'm in a motel now, far from Nebraska, but the hum's still here, faint, under the floor. The lights are back, flickering outside my window, closer every night. I saw her again last night, standing in the shadows, that smile unchanged. My knife's close, but it's useless. The lock on my door was undone again this morning, and I didn't touch it. Whatever followed me from that farm, it's here. And it's waiting. The trapdoor's slam still echoed in my ears as I stumbled out of the barn. The woman's black eyes burned into my mind, her unnatural smile a wound that wouldn't close. The scream that had pulled me there, a woman's cry, raw and desperate, had stopped, but the hum didn't. It followed me, vibrating through the ground, the air, my bones, as I ran across the yard. 3 months on the Miller farm, and I'd seen enough to know this place wasn't just haunted, it was alive, hungry, and it had my name. My lantern swung wildly, its light barely cutting through the dark, the cornfields pulsing with those lights, closer now, circling the yard like predators. I reached the shed, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the key. The air was thick, cold, smelling of rot and metal, that same stench from the barn, the tunnel, the child's dress on that stained slab. I locked the door, checked it twice, and collapsed onto the cot, my knife clutched tight, the 2 black feathers still in my pocket, their weight heavier than ever. The hum was relentless, rattling the bulb, shaking the walls, whispering my name in a voice that wasn't human. Outside, the lights moved through the corn, 30 yards out, their glow casting shadows that twisted like they were alive. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Not after what I'd seen. Dawn came slow, gray, and heavy, the sky a slab of lead. I dragged myself out of the shed, my body aching, my eyes gritty. The farm was silent, no birds, no wind, just the windmill's creak and that hum, softer now but never gone. I checked the coop first, my routine a lifeline. The chickens were down to 8, another gone, no trace, no feathers except the ones in my pocket. The pigs were worse, squealing, slamming against the pen, their eyes wild, blood on their snouts. The cows huddled in the pasture, refusing to graze, their lowing a mournful echo of the hum. I fed them, my hands unsteady, the air pressing down, watching. The barn loomed across the yard, its doors still ajar, dark as a wound. I didn't want to go back, but the scream, the trapdoor, the dress, they pulled me. I had to know. I grabbed my lantern, my knife, and a crowbar from the shed, my heart pounding as I crossed the yard. The cornfields were still, the lights gone in the daylight, but I felt them, waiting. I pushed the barn doors open, the hinges groaning, the smell hitting me, rotten, metallic, stronger now. The trapdoor was there, straw scattered like someone had tried to hide it again. I knelt, my knife out, and pulled it open. The hum surged, the stench choking, the darkness below swallowing my lantern's light. I descended the stairs, each step creaking, the air colder, damper, like a tomb. The walls were dirt, roots twisting through, the symbols, spirals, jagged lines, etched deeper, more intricate, glowing faintly in the lantern's light. The hum was a roar, vibrating my teeth, my skull, my soul. The tunnel widened into the chamber, the stone slab still there, the child's dress untouched, its stains darker, wetter. The bones around it glinted, small and brittle, too many to count. My stomach twisted, bile rising, the scream echoing in my head. I moved closer, my boots sinking into the dirt, and saw more, scratches on the slab, symbols carved so deep they seemed to pulse with the hum. The gurgle came again, low and wet, from deeper in the tunnel. I froze, my lantern shaking, the light catching on something new, marks on the walls, fresh, like claws dragged through the dirt. They led deeper, into the dark. The hum was alive, a voice now, whispering my name, over and over, pulling me forward. I gripped my knife, my crowbar, and took a step, then another, the tunnel narrowing, the air thicker, the smell overwhelming. The walls closed in, the symbols denser, their shapes twisting, making my eyes burn. The gurgle grew louder, joined by a rustle, like cloth dragging over dirt, or something heavier. I stopped at a fork in the tunnel, two paths branching into darkness. The hum came from both, but the gurgle was stronger to the left. I raised the lantern, my hand shaking, and saw her again. The woman, or whatever she was, at the edge of the light. Her pale face, her black eyes, her too wide smile, teeth sharp and glinting. She didn't move, just stared, the hum pulsing through her, around her, like she was its source. I backed away, my knife raised, my voice caught in my throat. The gurgle stopped, the rustle faded, and she was gone, the light flickering, the hum deafening. I ran, my boots slipping, the lantern swinging, shadows twisting like they were chasing me. The stairs were a blur, the trapdoor slamming shut behind me. I stumbled into the barn, out into the yard, the air cold, the lights in the fields back, pulsing faster, closer. The house was dark, no sign of Miller or Ruth. I didn't check. I grabbed my bag, my keys, and jumped into my truck, the engine roaring. The tires spun, the farm fading in my rearview, the lights following, flickering in the corn, keeping pace. I drove all night, the hum in my head, my hands shaking. Dawn found me at a gas station, 100 miles away, my heart still racing. I called the sheriff, told him about the scream, the trapdoor, the dress, the woman. He said he'd check, told me to stay put. A day later, he called back. Nothing. No trapdoor, no symbols, no dress. The barn was just a barn. Miller and Ruth said I'd been drinking, making it up. The sheriff didn't believe me. I could hear it. I'm in a motel now, far from Nebraska, but the hum's still here, faint, under the floor. The lights are outside my window, closer every night. I saw her again, standing in the shadows, that smile unchanged. My knife's close, but it's useless. The lock on my door was undone again this morning, and I didn't touch it. Whatever's in that chamber, it's not done with me. It's here, and it's waiting. The woman's smile haunted me as I tore out of the barn, her black eyes like voids that swallowed the light, her presence a stain on the air that followed me into the yard. The scream from the barn, the trapdoor, the child's dress on that stained slab. They were all pieces of something I couldn't name, something that had been watching me since I arrived at the Miller farm 3 months ago. The hum was louder now, a living thing, pulsing through the ground, the air, my skull, whispering my name as I stumbled toward the shed. The lantern in my hand shook, its light barely cutting through the dark, the cornfields alive with those pulsing lights, closer than ever, circling like wolves. I reached the shed, my hands fumbling with the key, the cold metal slipping in my sweaty grip. The air was thick, heavy with that rotten, metallic stench that clung to the barn, the tunnel, the feathers in my pocket, 3 now, each one black and slick, unnatural. I locked the door, checked it twice, 3 times, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. The hum was relentless, rattling the bulb overhead, shaking the walls, my bones. Outside, the lights moved through the corn, 20 yards out, their glow casting shadows that twisted, stretched, like they were reaching for me. I sat on the cot, knife in one hand, crowbar in the other, the feathers burning a hole in my pocket. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Not after her. Dawn crept in, gray and heavy, the sky a bruise that refused to break. I dragged myself out of the shed, my body aching, my eyes raw from staring at the window all night. The farm was silent, no birds, no wind, just the windmill's creak and that hum, softer in the daylight but never gone. The chickens were down to 7, another gone, no trace, no blood. The pigs screamed in their pen, slamming against the walls, their snouts bloody, their eyes fixed on the corn. The cows huddled tighter, their lowing a mournful echo of the hum, refusing to graze near the fields. I fed them, my hands shaking, the air pressing down, watching, waiting. I avoided the barn, but its shadow loomed, the trapdoor calling me back. I couldn't shake the image of the woman, her pale face, her too wide smile, her eyes like black pits. The scream, the dress, the bones, they were all connected, tied to the hum, the lights, the tracks I'd found in the dirt. I worked the fences instead, hammering posts, stringing wire, my hands bloody, my mind stuck on that chamber. The cornfields watched, their stalks denser, taller, like they were closing in. Every rustle made me jump, my knife always close, my eyes scanning the shadows. I found more tracks, those claw-like marks, fresh, circling the yard, leading into the corn and stopping, like always. Breakfast was silent, the kitchen dim, the bulb flickering. Miller sat at the table, his face gray, his coffee cold. Ruth was at the sink, her hands trembling so bad she dropped a glass, the shatter loud enough to make me flinch. I didn't mention the scream, the trapdoor, the woman. I'd tried before, and Miller's lies, coyotes, foxes, my imagination, were all I got. I ate fast, the eggs tasteless, and left. Ruth didn't look up. Miller's eyes followed me, but he said nothing. By noon, I was in the north field, hacking at weeds that grew back faster than I could clear them. The hum was louder, vibrating through the ground, my legs, my chest. The sky was flat, gray, the air thick with that rotten smell. I stopped once, sure I'd heard my name, whispered low, coming from the corn. I gripped the hoe, my knuckles white, and scanned the field. Nothing. Just stalks, their shadows sharp, moving when they shouldn't. I found another patch of oily dirt, darker, wetter, the smell choking. I dug, my knife cutting deep, and found another feather, black, slick, identical to the others. I shoved it in my pocket, my hands shaking, and kept working, the hum drowning out my thoughts. Supper was the same, cold stew, silent kitchen, Ruth's trembling hands, Miller's eyes on the window. I wanted to ask about the scream, the trapdoor, the woman, but the air was a warning. I ate, left, and locked myself in the shed. The hum was louder, shaking the walls, the bulb flickering like it was dying. I pulled out the feathers, for now, their sheen unnatural, glinting like they were alive. I locked them in my bag, checked the window, the door. The lights were there, closer, 15 yards out, pulsing slow, deliberate, circling the yard. Then I saw her again, standing at the edge of the light, just beyond the shed. Her pale face, her black eyes, her smile stretching too wide, teeth sharp and glinting. She didn't move, just stared, the hum pulsing through her, around her, like she was its heart. I froze, my knife raised, my breath caught. The air was alive, pressing against me, the hum a voice now, whispering my name, over and over. She raised a hand, her fingers long, too long, beckoning. I slammed the curtains shut, my heart racing, the hum deafening. I didn't sleep. The whispers came all night, my name hissed through the walls, the lights pulsing outside, the hum shaking the shed. I sat there, knife in hand, crowbar at my side, waiting for dawn. The lights faded with the gray light. But the hum didn't stop. It was in my head now, a constant drone, a voice calling me back to the barn, to the tunnel, to her. The next day, I found more tracks, more feathers, more oily patches. The animals were worse, pigs screaming, chickens scattering, cows refusing to move. I worked through it, my hands bloody, my head pounding. Miller avoided me, Ruth stayed inside, and the farm felt like a noose tightening. The whispers came in daylight now, my name clear, the lights flickering even under the sun. I kept my knife sharp, my door locked, my eyes on the fields. She was out there, waiting, and I knew she'd come again. The woman's black eyes followed me as I slammed the shed's curtains shut, her too wide smile a slash in the dark, her presence a weight that crushed the air from my lungs. The hum was a roar, shaking the walls, my bones, whispering my name in a voice that wasn't human. I'd seen her twice now. First in the tunnel under the barn, then just outside the shed, her long fingers beckoning, her teeth glinting like the black feathers in my pocket. 3 months on the Miller farm had stripped away any doubt. This place was a trap, and whatever lived in the cornfields, in the hum, in her, was done waiting. I had to leave. Now. I grabbed my bag, my hands shaking so bad I dropped the keys twice. The 4 feathers, black, slick, unnatural, were still in my pocket, their weight heavier than stone. My knife was in my belt, the crowbar by the cot, but they felt useless against her. The hum pulsed, louder, the lights outside the window brighter, 10 yards out, circling the yard like vultures. I checked the lock, the window, my heart pounding, the air thick with that rotten, metallic stench. The whispers came again, my name hissed through the walls, clear and cold, pulling me toward the barn, the tunnel, her. I slung my bag over my shoulder, grabbed the crowbar, and opened the door. The yard was dark, the lantern's light barely cutting through the night. The cornfields loomed, their stalks still, no rustle, just the hum and the lights, pulsing faster now, like a heartbeat. The barn stood silent, its doors ajar, the trapdoor's memory burning in my mind, the child's dress, the bones, the symbols. The house was dark, no sign of Miller or Ruth. I didn't call out. I didn't trust them anymore, not after their lies, their silence, their eyes that saw too much and said too little. I ran to my truck, the gravel crunching under my boots, the hum chasing me, the lights keeping pace in the fields. The engine roared to life, the tires spinning in the mud, the farm shrinking in my rearview. The lights followed, flickering through the corn, weaving between stalks, never falling behind. I drove fast, the dirt road rattling my bones, the hum fading but never gone, a low throb in my head. The sky was black, no stars, just the glow of those lights in my mirrors, pulsing, watching. I didn't stop, didn't slow, not until dawn broke gray and heavy, 100 miles away, at a gas station off a lonely highway. My hands were still shaking, the feathers in my pocket, the knife in my belt, the crowbar on the seat beside me. I sat in the truck, the engine off, the silence loud after the hum. The gas station was empty, its fluorescent lights buzzing, the air smelling of diesel and dust. I pulled out my phone, my fingers clumsy, and called the sheriff. My voice was hoarse, raw, as I told him everything, the scream, the trapdoor, the dress, the bones, the woman, her eyes, her smile. He listened, his voice calm, too calm, and said he'd check it out, told me to stay put. I hung up, my heart still racing, the hum faint but there, like a splinter in my mind. I checked my bag, the feathers still there, glinting under the gas station's lights, their sheen wrong, alive. I waited in a diner across the road, coffee cold, my eyes on the window. The hum was softer, but it followed me, vibrating through the floor, the table, my bones. The feathers stayed in my pocket, their weight a reminder I couldn't shake. A day later, the sheriff called back. His voice was flat, skeptical. "Nothing," he said. "No trapdoor, no symbols, no dress, no bones. The barn was just a barn, clean, empty. Miller and Ruth were there, acting normal, saying I'd been drinking, making things up, causing trouble." The sheriff didn't believe me, I heard it in his pause, his tone. He told me to move on, to let it go. I hung up, my hands shaking, the hum louder now, like it was laughing. I drove again, another 100 miles, to a motel in some nowhere town, the kind of place where no one asks questions. The room was small, the walls stained, the bed creaking under my weight. I locked the door, checked the windows, kept the knife close. The hum was still there, faint, under the floor, in the walls, in my head. I didn't sleep. I sat on the bed, the feathers on the nightstand, their black sheen glinting under the bulb. The lights came that night, flickering outside the window, just beyond the parking lot, pulsing slow, deliberate, like they'd followed me. I watched them, my knife in hand, my heart pounding, until dawn. The next night, she was there. I saw her through the motel window, standing in the shadows, her pale face, her black eyes, her smile stretching too wide. She didn't move, just stared, the hum pulsing through her, around her, like she was its source. I slammed the curtains shut, checked the lock, the knife shaking in my hand. The hum was louder, rattling the bulb, the walls, my teeth. I sat there, crowbar by my side, waiting for dawn, the whispers back, my name hissed through the dark, clear and cold. Morning came, and I checked the door. The lock was undone, the chain loose, though I hadn't touched it. My bag was open, the feathers untouched, but the air felt wrong, heavy, like she'd been in the room. I grabbed my things, left the motel, and kept driving, the hum following, the lights in my mirrors at night, her face in every shadow. The farm was gone, but it wasn't done with me. She wasn't done with me. The hum, the lights, the whispers, they were here, and they were waiting. The motel door was ajar when I woke, a thin crack of gray dawn seeping through, the lock undone, though I'd checked it 3 times before collapsing onto the bed. My knife was still in my hand, its blade cold against my palm, the 4 black feathers scattered across the nightstand like spilled ink. I'd driven 200 miles from the Miller farm, but the hum followed, a low throb under the floor, in my bones, whispering my name in a voice that wasn't human. The woman's face, pale, with black eyes and that too wide smile, haunted every shadow, every flicker of light outside my window. 3 months on that cursed farm, and I'd escaped the barn, the tunnel, the child's dress, but not her. Not it. I bolted upright, my heart pounding, the air thick with that rotten, metallic stench that clung to the farm, to the feathers, to me. The room was small, the walls stained with years of cigarette smoke, the bed creaking under my weight. I checked the door again, my hands shaking, the chain loose, the lock turned, though I swore I'd secured it. The hum was louder now, vibrating through the floor, the walls, my skull, like it had followed me from Nebraska, from that chamber under the barn. The lights were there too, flickering outside the window, just beyond the parking lot, pulsing slow, deliberate, circling like they had in the cornfields. I grabbed the feathers, their slick sheen glinting under the motel's dim bulb, and shoved them into my pocket. My bag was packed, the knife in my belt, the crowbar by the bed. I'd called the sheriff 2 days ago, told him about the scream, the trapdoor, the dress, the bones, the woman. He'd found nothing, no symbols, no slab, no bones. Miller and Ruth had played dumb, said I was drunk, unhinged, making it all up. The sheriff's voice had been flat, skeptical, telling me to move on. But I couldn't move on. The hum, the lights, her, they wouldn't let me. I left the motel, the clerk barely glancing up as I tossed the key on the counter. The truck's engine roared, the tires crunching gravel as I pulled onto the highway, the sky a heavy gray, the air cold and damp. The hum followed, faint but constant, a splinter in my mind. I drove all day, no destination, just away, the road stretching like the dirt path out of the farm. The lights came at dusk, flickering in the fields along the highway, weaving through distant trees, keeping pace. I didn't stop, didn't eat, didn't sleep. My hands gripped the wheel, my eyes burning, the feathers heavy in my pocket, the hum louder with every mile. By nightfall, I was in another nowhere town, another motel, this one worse than the last, peeling paint, a flickering neon sign, a bed that smelled of mildew. I locked the door, checked the windows, kept the knife close. The hum was stronger, rattling the bulb, the walls, my teeth.